Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's Karma Cards. I feel like this setting is perfect for what I'm about to say because as of right now, as of the time I'm recording this Karma Cards, there has been 16 solar flares today, including an X-class flare and very strong M-class flares. 16. That means it's been about 1 an hour. Roughly, it's been averaging about 1 an hour since midnight of yesterday. And so, wow, that's a lot. I mean, that I think is the most. Well, there's a group of friends and we're all kind of tallying it. And all of us are like, I don't think I've ever seen this many in one day. How wild is that? But you know what makes it more wild is yesterday was the new moon in Taurus. And that new moon is a particularly lucky moon. New moon in Taurus is always lucky because the moon is exalted in the sign of Taurus. Taurus is co-ruled by Venus, one of the benefics, and it deals with things like money and love and beauty. And so there's a lot of positive energy already associated with it. And then you have this crazy solar energy. And by the way, the solar flares have been going off for days. I mean, last time I talked to you, I was telling you there was a bunch of solar flares and I was bragging about how there was like 8 one day. That's half of what we've got just today. This gets me excited because obviously the more active the sun is, the closer we are to seeing that solar flash that we're all waiting for. And so this is it's an exciting moment. Do I think we're going to flash today? It'd be nice, but I don't think so. But we are moving forward energetically. We are making big strides. Yesterday, during the new moon spirit circle, of course, the Arcturian council came through and gave more information, which some of which I can't fully remember. And that's sort of the hard part of doing the channeling is my job isn't to really listen, it's to allow it to come through. So I hear parts of it. Some of it goes away, but not to worry because I've captured that recording and I will be posting it to my, my podcast, which for some reason the name I'm totally blanking on. Modern Mystic Soul Podcast. There it is. I will be posting that to my podcast and it will be up live next Tuesday. So do check that out. But there were I remember there was a lot of information about continuing to help yourself through these ascension energies. But we are continuing to move up energetically. The direction is up. It's always up. As my team likes to say, there's nowhere to go but up. So we're continuously moving up in energy. What made yesterday's new moon kind of like extra special is all the activity that was happening with the stellium in Taurus. So a stellium is when you've got 3 or more planets in the same sign. And yesterday during that new moon, we had 5 planets in the sign of Taurus. Well, 4 and, technically 3 and the sun, which is a star, and the moon. But those are considered in astrological terms. We can just consider them planets for the sake of that terminology. And that gives us a stellium. What was cool about it is both Jupiter and Venus were a part of that stellium, which gives it very good energy. Those are the 2 benefic planets. They're always adding to our life. They're always like Jupiter is expanding and it's good luck, and Venus is full of love and romance and money, good luck. I mean, there's just a lot of good luck energy. So a lot of positivity, a lot of good luck energy. And then it was mixed in with Uranus. Now, Uranus is a plot twist planet, right? It's a game changer. You don't know what you're going to get, but when you put it in with this grounding Taurus energy, which is where Uranus is at right now, it's been there since 2018. Now, with Uranus in the sign of Taurus, there is a little bit of grounding to it. I feel like Taurus helps give it a kind of like an anchor so it doesn't go too crazy, but it does affect the physical plane more. And when you add it with Jupiter, Uranus and Jupiter is a great combination because it means breakthroughs, ahas, inventions, like things coming to light that we finally understand, seeing a new way of doing things. And then you've got Uranus and Venus, which is about love and romance. And so there's sort of this shaking it up energy, but you're shaking things up and it's having a good outcome. So I like the combination of those together. In fact, I would kind of say if you were to take that stellium and just kind of encapsulate it in a phrase, it would be good things happen quickly, which I love. And I have to say, when I woke up today, the day after that new moon, I felt like there was definitely a positive energy shift. And as I tap into my team today, they're confirming that, yes, there is a positive energy shift. We are being introduced with more Christ consciousness, right? So as I understand it in like biblical texts, they often talk about the return of Christ. And some people think it's a literal return, but many of us also believe it's the return of this energy. And I'm telling you, I feel it coming in. So Christ consciousness is one of the highest levels of consciousness that we can receive at this level. And it is a beautiful energy. It's that loving energy. It's all encompassing. It's about union with all. And one of the predominant themes of the Christ consciousness energy is unconditional love, understanding, compassion, and forgiveness. And forgiveness is the energy I feel like they're really like asking us to understand what forgiveness is. Now, some of us really get into forgiveness, like if you know I'm going to butcher this, no, that word. I'm going to write it here because I can't say it unless I'm looking at it. But it's a Hawaiian prayer that's centered around those Christ consciousness principles. And it's so beautiful, but understanding forgiveness at a deeper level, right? It's something that sets you free. And the point of this period, the point of moving forward is to set yourself free. I was talking to my kids today on a walk, and I was talking about how there's a lot of ideologies or propagandas or way of focusing on energy right now that's trying to make you feel bad for different reasons. Crazy statements out there about things that are trying to make you feel bad for something you can't control, whether it's the fact of your race, your gender, your skin color. These are things you can't control, and there are people out there trying to make you feel bad just for existing as you are. On top of that, we've got people criticizing humans for just being alive. Like there is a certain thought frequency out there right now, and again, it's coming from a very dark place, but this thought frequency is really about, you should be ashamed to be a human being that takes up space on this planet. You're destroying this planet just by being here, and so you should want to do everything you can to diminish yourself. And this line of thinking is not only very destructive, but it's a lie, and it does not come from a forgiving place. It comes from a place of wanting to induce shame and guilt for just existing. And I pointed out to my kids that God, source, the universe, didn't create you so that you could be shamed for being alive. So that's something you can't control. Obviously, you are desired. That's the message that we're getting from Spirit all the time, that you're very important. There's a reason you're here, and it's very important to have you here. And by shaming or making smaller your existence or diminishing yourself because you feel in some way that you should be held responsible for the way things are, is not the way forward, and it's not based in forgiveness. In fact, it's based in sort of this kind of karmic tie to something that, we're karmically tied to humanity by being a part of it, but we do not have to take on the blame, the sins constantly. That's not going to help us or heal us. It's not going to help or heal the planet. It's not going to unite us together if we're constantly shaming ourselves for existing in whatever form we exist in. Rather, we must come to that place of forgiveness so that we can then move forward, so that we could break this cycle of karma. And really, that's the attitude that I'm getting from not only from my team, from the Arcturians, it's just the energy that's coming in now, that the more we receive Christ consciousness energy, the more we're going to understand what forgiveness is, even if it means we have to forgive ourselves for being duped, right? Forgive ourselves for believing that we should be ashamed for being who we are, or holding a certain perspective, or existing on this planet, or taking up space. Now, hopefully none of those things are affecting you, but if they are, this is something that you would want to allow yourself to recognize, that you have a very important purpose, that God doesn't, the universe, God does not make mistakes about creation. Creation is very deliberate, and there is more order to it than I think a lot of people recognize. Some people see it as chaotic, and though there is a type of abstractness to it, there's also a divine order in how things are happening. And we are here on purpose at this time. And like I've said before, my team always talks about us being highly selected. You were here intentionally. Not only did you very much want to be here, but you were also considered to have the right temperament, the right strengths or gifts, or the right combination of stuff that was necessary for this particular time period. And in a way, you can kind of think on it like this: is you were voted on, and you were voted for to be here at this time. And so part of what we have to do is actually take up that space that we deserve to be here, that every single one of us does, and that we're holding an important piece of the puzzle. And I do remember the Arcturians talking about that last night, that it's crucial. It's beautiful. It's by design, because the universe, source energy, wants to know the fullness of itself. And how can it do that if everything falls into line or everything stays in place? That's not how it's happening. Instead, it's a beautiful, intricate pattern and design. And to know all of yourself is to explore all aspects. And so again, we come back to forgiveness, because a big part of what our work is now is to, again, understand all parts of ourselves, to integrate it, and to fully love it and appreciate it. Recognize that just as Source is saying you are important and valid and necessary, so is every single aspect of yourself. So is everything that you've done in the past. It doesn't mean you have to keep carrying it forward or holding on to it so tightly, simply that it was a necessary step to get you here. It's a part of the journey that was just as important as the part you're at now. And that if we feel a heavy burden, that's where we should look to allow ourselves to move into a space of forgiveness, whether we feel a heavy burden because of the state of the world, or we feel a heavy burden for actions we took in the past, or people we chose, or things that happened to us. Whatever the heavy burden is, it's to see it, to understand it, to have compassion for it, and to forgive it, so that we can release ourselves from a very heavy density. And like I keep mentioning, there are opposing forces that want you to stay very stuck here, because inside this realm, they have this illusory control. It's not real. And the minute we decide it's not real, it really isn't real, but they have an illusory control and would like you to agree with them that they have control, so that they can feel like they have control. And so, of course, we're going to hear things about how we should hold this heavy weight, and that's truly responsible to hold this heavy burden, right? Hold the heavy burden of the fact that we are still so divisive and separated, rather than forgive humanity for not fully being able to see that that's not the path forward, and be a bright spot that does see that unity is still possible, that we are never going to reach full agreement on anything, and yet unity is still possible. It's just the ability to hold two truths that we can fully unify and still see things differently. This can be done. It requires a certain amount of spiritual maturity, and one of the ways that we gain that is, again, through forgiveness and looking for where we can forgive people, and ourselves and the situation we find ourselves in, right? Because one of the things that happens is if we're constantly looking at how this is wrong or it doesn't work, we're constantly sort of resisting it. And one of the things that forgiveness helps us move towards is acceptance. And acceptance doesn't mean liking. It just means I see it and I acknowledge it. I accept that that's the reality. I accept the reality is, for example, that we're never going to get everyone to agree that that we all see it the same. I accept that reality. However, I also believe that we can hold differing opinions and hold respect and hold unity, understanding that there's something usually that comes in that allows us to work together, even when we don't fundamentally agree on the details. We can still work together. We can still unify. And that's one of the big messages that's coming through right now. So up next, let's look at the karma cards and see what they add to this message. If you're new to karma cards, let me quickly show you how these work. I have 3 decks here, planets, signs of the zodiac, and the houses of astrology. And I've already asked my team, what is the message you have for us this week? And I've got 2 sets of answers. A set in red, which are action related, and a set in blue, which are outcome related. And the way that you play is you tune in with your beautiful intuition and feel what is the advice you're looking for this week. Are you looking for action related advice or outcome related advice? And of course, you can always choose both. And while you're choosing, the timing for this reading is May 8th through May 15th. And the flavor of this reading, we've got Uranus. Now remember what I said earlier, that Uranus is sort of a big player in the current energy cycle. It's got a lot of attention on it, having both the moon in Taurus and Uranus in Taurus makes them linked. It's also Taurus season. Uranus has been in Taurus the entire time. It's kind of a big player in the energy right now. It's kind of a big player right now. It's all about unexpected change happening. Things get shaken up. Uranus is it's an energy that's flip-floppy. You're not sure what you're going to get. Again, it's a plot twist type of energy. Expect the unexpected. In the sign of Scorpio, which is about digging down for the deeper truth. And Scorpio wants to get right to the heart of the matter. It doesn't want to waste time. It wants to get right in there and find out what's going on. It uses that sharp tail to hit right at the heart of the truth. In the 8th house, which is ruled by Scorpio. So there is this is a kind of drama. There's some drama in this reading. The 8th house is the house of mystery. It's love, death, and taxes. It's a house of transformations. Are you ready for the drama? Okay. Those who are choosing action, your spiritual action at this time is to stir up the situation by using the extraordinary power of prayer as a life or death issue. So prayer is the asking. This is us reaching out and asking as a life or death issue. It means now is the time to do it. Don't wait. And just considering how extraordinary the energy we're in right now, it is time to sort of reach in there and find those resources. We know we're supposed to move towards forgiveness and oneness and compassion and unconditional love. We know we're supposed to do this, yet we're still get hung up on the little details, and it feels you gotta reach now and ask for the help that you need to get you there, because this is the kind of energy we need to make this jump, right? If we're not in this place, at least to some degree, at least got a solid footing in this oneness, unconditional love, understanding, forgiveness energy, if we're not in that place, we kind of can't get on the bus, if you will. We might miss the bus and have to take the next bus. And there will be other opportunities to move up energetically. So no one really misses it. They want us to know that. But this next leap, this next bus coming, and when I'm talking about the bus metaphorically, I'm talking about ascension, about making this big leap in energy that we're trying to do. This one is, again, you have to have certain requirements to move through it. You've got to get in alignment with it to move through it. If we're not in alignment, we just can't do it. It's like, imagine like if you don't have all of your credits to graduate, you're not going to be able to graduate with the graduating party. The graduation is most definitely happening. Are you ready? And they're like, stir it up. If you're having a hard time getting there, ask for help, ask for your guides, your angels, your higher self, source itself. Ask for help getting you there. If you're stuck on something, pray to experience another perspective. Pray to see it in a new way so that you can allow yourself to keep moving forward in this energy and you don't get stuck. Because again, like I said, the opposing party, those who don't want us to graduate, are going to be constantly casting these nets and traps for us to fall into, where it's like, no, I'm really triggered again. I'm really activated. I really am angry or hopeless or afraid or whatever it is. They'll keep casting those nets. We can ask for help rising above it. Mental action at this time. Be open to new ideas about the highest and lowest aspects of getting and using power. I feel like the deeper we go into our own spiritual maturity as we grow with this new energy, we understand power in a very different way. For example, what's the greatest power we can kind of comprehend? We would call that source or God or the universe. Notice how source, the universe, uses this power. It's not the way humanity uses its power, right? It's a very expansive, benevolent, quiet, grounding, holding energy. And as we spiritually mature, we learn to mirror that, to hold that and understand what power is, right? So sometimes power is the ability to make things move or the ability to create. Sometimes power is the ability to shake something up. Other times power is knowing you have the power to destroy something and yet having the grace, the discipline, the self-control to not do it. Right? So it's knowing how to use it and when to use it is a big part of this energy, and like for us to understand and learn, because not only do we need to accept at some point, if we're moving forward, that we are not just designed in the image of the creator, but we are creators and that we do have power. And part of the lessons here, the schooling we're going through, is how to hold that power. We get lots of examples right now of what not to do, right? We can look at people misusing and mishandling power in all sorts of ways. And a lot of times I look at that and I'm like, is that power or is it just control? Because a lot of times we get those two mixed up together and they're not always the same thing. So we are here to learn that. One of the things it talks about in the law of one is the trifecta, is to balance the trifecta. And the trifecta they talk about is love, wisdom, and power. And that you have to balance the three. That if any one of those goes too gets too swollen or shrinks too much, it throws off the other two. You have to balance the three together. And one of the things it's talking about this week is understanding power, seeing it a different way. What's the power of forgiveness as well? How powerful is that as a tool? It seems like it depends on how you're looking at it. So if you're looking at forgiveness as almost like a giving up, or just I guess it's over. I guess I just have to, like a defeat in some way. Whereas they're saying, no, look at it in this way. It's the power to know that you could crush someone. You could take all this anger and rage and direct it at them. But instead, you choose to have some self-discipline, some self-control, and compassion and understanding and love. And you choose to withhold that action. You're not going to, because two wrongs don't make a right type of situation, right? Like things like that. So it's sort of a meditation on power and how can I see it differently? How do I currently look at it And how can I look at it differently moving forward? How can I learn to appreciate it and allow myself to hold it? Some of us have seen things in this world where we're like, if that's what power is, I want nothing to do with it. And yet then you're not balanced, right? Your trifecta, your perfect triangle of energy is off. You might be full of love, but you have no power. And so that love ends up allowing other people to use or abuse you, right? So having power gives you that sense of like presence. It gives you a sense of like, my boundaries are serious. All right. So we want to look at how we're looking at it and how can we see it in a new way. What's something else that shows you power that's not the current perception you hold? What is the highest aspect of having power? What are the lowest aspects? I think we're pretty good. I feel like in general, we're all pretty good on what the lowest are, but have we looked at the highest? Right? So that's one of the meditations for this week. Physical action. Invent a way to control the situation and use other people's resources. So I'm asking the team, what does this one have to do with forgiveness? Because I feel like it's connected to that. And they're saying that especially when it comes to forgiving other people for things that have happened in the past, there can be a resistance in people in doing that because they're sort of like, if I say I forgive this, then basically I'm saying it's okay. And that's not really how it works. Forgiveness is a key that gets you off the wheel of karma. So you're no longer connected to that person in that situation in that way. So it does set you free. And they're saying, in terms of forgiveness, invent a way to have control of the situation. And I'm only going to share with you something that's coming through for me. If it works for you, use that. Ergo, use other people's resources. And if it doesn't, invent your own way that you could view this where you feel like empowered by taking this action rather than feeling like you're giving away power. Because a lot of times I think we can conflate our anger, our very just anger, with having power, which it's energy, but is it power? If it keeps us connected to the karmic cycle of the event and always kind of pulled in by the thought of it or the other person, then is it power? So in the visual that's coming up in my head, I often go back to what I remember reading in one of Neil Donald Walsh's books. It's called Friendship with God. And he talks about the healing center that's often mentioned in other materials, like Dolores Cannon's material. It's brought up in that. And Law of One, it's brought up in that. But there's a healing center on the other side. And this is for all of us as we are souls who leave this plane and go through the next. When we're on the other side, we go through a healing cycle, and it sort of has to do with us reviewing our lives and what did we learn? What did we balance? Did we leave anything karmically there that we need to rebalance before we move forward? And as a soul, we want to do it. We do. We want to rebalance it. We don't want to have open karma. And there's two ways to deal with it. You can deal with your karma here, which is my preferred way, or you could deal with it in the healing center. And this is kind of a weird, so just stay with me because it's a weird way to get into forgiveness. And if it works for you, use it. Whatever someone does to you here, if they don't address it here, they will have to address it on the other side. Meaning you don't get out when you create karmic debt unless you pay it back, right? Unless you atone and, like acknowledge this happened. I feel, this is how I feel about it. I ask for forgiveness. I forgive myself. I acknowledge it. I have compassion for myself, for the other person, whatever it is, the situation is, you can heal it here. Or if not, you go to the other side and heal it. And the other side, it's sort of like a 10 times stronger scenario, meaning that in the healing center, one of the things that happens is anything that's left open or repaid. So you can kind of think about like karma as debt. When you pay it here, the interest rate is lower. When you pay it on the other side, the interest rate is higher. So it's like 10 times higher. On the other side, in the healing center, what you would go through is Let's say you yelled at someone and just made them feel really small here, and you never acknowledged it, never went through it, processed it, sent out the energy of, you know, apology and forgiveness and things like that. Then on the other side, you would go through that scenario again, and you'd start by playing you as you did it. You would yell at them and make them feel small. And then the scenario would flip and you would be them receiving it from you, but 10 times worse. You'd feel it the way they felt it, and then 10 times more intense than how they felt it, so that you really understand what that energetic exchange was and what it did and how it took it, so that you could really understand it and come to that place of true remorse, where you want to right it, that you want to correct that energy, and sort of like going through that healing center is one of the ways that you atone for that. Some people think that sounds like hell. It could be a type of hell, especially if you're a soul who did a lot of damage while you were here and didn't try to work to balance it out. So the reason I bring this up is that if you have a hard time coming to a place of forgiveness for something that someone has done to you, one, and this could be a very selfish reason, and I think that's fine, but one, you could say, you know what, I'm going to forgive you, not for your sake, but for mine, because I don't want to deal with this karmically on the other side. I don't want to have to meet you and go through this situation 10 times over again until I can find the strength to forgive you. So that could be one reason you find forgiveness. Another reason is, well, it's going to be like, I actually feel a little sorry for you because you haven't figured out that you are karmically tied to this and you have a debt that you owe. And so therefore, I choose to forgive you. I set myself free, right? And I leave this situation, and you're going to have to pay the bill, if you will, in the end. So I know that was a long explanation, but hopefully it gives you another way of thinking about how to move into a space of forgiveness and find a way where you feel more empowered in the situation, like you're not giving away power, but really how you're understanding how powerful it is to move into a space of forgiveness and understand that no one gets out of that, right? You can pay now or pay later, but you will pay, is sort of that theme that my team is talking about here. All right, so now let's go over outcomes with Uranus in Scorpio in the 8th house of mystery and transformation. Spiritual outcome at this time is an unusual example of purification to resurrect personal power. And I feel like the scenario we just talked about kind of dovetails into this quite nicely. So there's going to be, if we're like, again, thinking about, okay, graduation, what are the credits I have to earn? Okay, where's the headspace I need to get into to be in alignment with the energy that we're so clearly going through? And by the way, while I'm talking, another solar flare is happening. So what was that? It's like 17 now. So big energy happening. We're being asked to live in the level of Christ consciousness, and that was represented, by great teachers like Jesus and Buddha and such. And so we're being asked to live at that level of consciousness and ask for help to get there. Use whatever unusual means you can. It doesn't matter how you get there, just kind of get yourself there. And you will find that going through this, that especially the forgiveness part does resurrect personal power. You've just set yourself free. And I might add that you might feel like hungry for, where else can I set myself free? I was thinking about this earlier, like I said, with the conversation with my kids. There's so much guilt for just being alive right now. Like you should basically live in a shoebox and barely breathe, if you want to be a good human. It's such BS. Right? You can forgive yourself for feeling guilty. You can forgive yourself for feeling the shame. You can forgive those who have that dark agenda. They're just playing their part, right? Like, how do we get there? How do you forgive those who are really doing some nasty things to humanity, the crimes against humanity that are becoming more and more evident all the time? How do we get to forgiving that? Right? As you start to feel how powerful it is and how much peace comes into your heart when you learn to do it, you will be more invested in trying to find those situations where you can really, how do I observe them differently? Yes, I see what you're doing is bad, and yeah, maybe I'm observing you as straight up evil. How can I find a place in my heart where I can still see that and acknowledge that and deny consent to that while also holding forgiveness for you? It's, again, requiring more spiritual maturity from us. Mental outcome at this time, a different way of looking at the secrets of the mysteries of life. Okay. So we got to look at mysteries and secrets in a different way too. There's a book I'm reading called Downloads from the Nine. It's a really interesting and kind of complicated book to read. I think I've shown it to you before. It's the one that's the pages are all written in like a spiral, so you have to read it in all different directions. One of the things I love about that book is the description of how did we get this dark, like how did source get a dark side, right? If source is the light, if it's nothing but love, how did it create a dark side? Did it always exist, or did it come into existence later? And according to the channelings in this book, it came into existence just a little bit later. So source, again, wanted to experience itself, created more of itself. And as it created these aspects and was able to interact with it, one of those aspects went, wait a minute, wait. You're saying I'm you, right? But you're there and I'm over here. So how can I be you? I must be separate. And that first time that thought occurred, this created sort of a black hole. It was the first like black hole, if you will, that was created according to the channeling. And they call it the nebula. And so what happened really was this aspect of source collapsed in on itself. And so the other parts of source went, oh no, like what happened? Let's go help you. I need to help you. I need to help myself, right? And as it did, it would send parts of itself in to retrieve itself, to kind of pull itself out of this black hole. And it never could. It never could. It just more and more parts of source would get absorbed by this energy. The first sin, if you will, is the sort of mistaken idea of separation. Just because you could witness yourself. It's like, imagine seeing yourself in a mirror and like the mirror looking back and going, well, if you're looking at me and I'm looking at you, I must not be you. That would be really trippy. But it's kind of like that happened. So source had a problem now because a part of itself separated, and no matter how much it tried to regather itself, those parts would just get sucked in. It was almost like this other part was just convincing him, like, don't you get it? Like, it's over there. We're here. I'm here. You're there. And I'm talking to you. You're separate too. And they all would like collapse in. And so source had a problem. Source, the pieces of source that were being sent in could not retrieve what was there. And what came to be known, according to this channeling, is like, I can't go in. I cannot afford to send more of myself into this space because it'll dissolve everything completely. And so I need to create something very special, something that's both a mix, something that can go in there, see what's in there, look around and understand it, and yet come back out. And apparently that's how humanity was created, that we, the two hemispheres of the brain, right? We've got source and a little bit of this void space, or we call it the ego, right? But this idea of separation, we were given that a little drop of the idea of separation. And the purpose for it was so that source could go in through us. We hold source. We hold the drop of separation. It allows us to go into this void and see what's in there. And as soon as source could start seeing what was in there without being absorbed fully by it, then source could have a plan, could create the plan for reunification. And it, of course, starts within us. That's kind of the mission here, is not only is source reunifying all parts of itself, but in order for it to do that, we have to reunify first. And so the first level of forgiveness is really a forgiveness of the self for all the times we split, because see, we have this drop drop of this nebula in us, that this false belief of separation. And whenever parts of us get rejected in this world, whether it was rejection from parents or friends or lovers or society, we separate again. We're like, nope, can't have this part. This part gets me rejected. This part gets me hurt. I reject this part. Oh, you get really angry? Can't be really angry. That's not acceptable. That means you're bad, right? So gotta hide that. Can't have that be a part of it, right? You were really rude and outspoken. How dare you, right? Break that part off, hide it. You see how we just kind of repeat that trauma? Even though we were traumatized, we sort of repeat it. And so the first thing always is this unification of the self. The first task, if you want to see unity in the world, is to create unity within yourself. And that means learning to love, accept, appreciate, and especially forgive those parts of yourself that you reject for whatever reason, because for whatever reason they weren't acceptable, or you didn't validate them or believe in them, whatever it is. That's kind of the first thing. So I share that story with you because it is a different way of looking at the mystery. I found it very helpful. I found it very interesting because so many people ask, why does evil exist? If everything is just source, how is there evil? And there's some people who don't believe in demons or lower energy, and I kind of feel like it doesn't really matter, because the point of it is, whatever's making evil in the world, we obviously see it. We see the pain and suffering that is created in all sorts of different ways. And I think people have a hard time understanding that if source is nothing but love, how does that exist? And I feel that story, that channeling, answers the question pretty well, because as soon as we think we're separate, it's much easier to harm something that we don't feel connected to. Once you recognize your connection with it and see that whatever harm or unjust behavior I put upon this piece, I'm putting upon myself as well, then we look at it very differently. And so I think that's kind of an unusual way to look at the secrets and mysteries of life. Does it answer every question? Maybe not, but it gives us a new way to engage with it and understand, one, how that's even possible to begin with. How does duality exist at all? But two, why humanity might be such an extra special piece and so necessary for solving this great mystery that is the sort of source puzzle of all creation. All right, physical outcome at this time, an unexpected change resulting from the power of a major change. So a change coming from a change. I feel like the major change, number one, is the level of energy we're getting. Major change. Today is a prime example of this. Will this keep up tomorrow? I don't know, but I do know that every time we're getting dosed with this energy, it's molecularly changing us. It's changing us. It's expanding us. The Arcturians were talking about like these little glowing pieces of energy coming into our system and trying to get into our cells. And it's really important to drink lots of water and have electrolytes. Make sure you're getting your electrolytes through sea salt and things like that. Really important to do it because all these like particles are coming in and trying to move into place, and the water will help them do that. So there's a major change happening, and we're not going back. We're not going down in energy. We're only going up. So there's the major change. And I think the change is just a change in perspective. Also, I feel like, again, I heard someone say that we leaped forward 1,000 years in energy. And I'm like, yeah, I can see that. One of the things I've heard and I know from my team is that this jump that humanity is going to make with this flash won't just be like, for example, if I really want to show you something here. This little candle lid is kind of a good example. Imagine that this what you're looking at. This is actually like a zodiac wheel, but imagine it's the wheel of time, okay? And 6 o'clock down here is the darkest period, okay? We've moved out of 6 o'clock and we're kind of like over here. That would be around 7. The golden age sort of starts up in here. That's around 9 or 10, maybe 9. This little bit right here is where the golden age starts. That means we've got a silver and a bronze age to go through. We're going to leap from down here to up here in a flash. So where traditionally, if we were just moving through the cycles, it would take, hundreds, possibly 1,000 years to move into that golden age. We're going to leap from a very dark period into one of the most beautiful and expansive periods of time that we can imagine. And it'll be instantaneous. And we're being primed right now. You're being primed right now. All these things, all these flashes, they're sending photonic energy. Again, we're being radiated, which is why the water and salt is important. But it's not the bad kind of radiation. It's good, but it is intense. And you are changing. You are undergoing things. And again, we want all of our credits so we can graduate, make that big leap and go into that next level. In order to do that, we want to get those Christ consciousness principles. Again, those are unconditional love, compassion, understanding, forgiveness. These are core things. If we get those, and we start applying them to the best of our ability, it's not about perfect. It's more about intention and that effort, right? Really put in that effort. That's what's going to get you those credits that we're looking for. And I bet you're already doing it. I know a lot of you are. I know so many of you that watch this show, and you are fantastic people. So I do not think you have to work that hard, but we still want to be working. We don't want to slack. We don't want to go into senior slack mode and be like, yeah, I'm going to do it. No, everything counts, right? So let's keep getting those points, making it easier and easier for us to make that evolutionary leap. And we'll be on that bus, and we will be enjoying a very, very cool cycle of time very soon. And with that, I'm sending you so much love. Mwah.